and this patch is coming out tomorrow on June 4th. So it's supposed to be pretty decent. GG's Cray. Uh, I guess the event, we got the Rabbit's Revenge coming back. I don't think many people really care deeply about this event at this point. There's no new rewards. It's the same old rewards. I don't know if you're going to be able to get a new chest, cause if you got a chest last year, if it's just going to be one, but we'll see. The the really big optimization coming in the new world is they're introducing the shard system. The shard system is a system that you see a lot in other games. I've been told WoW has this. Various MMOs have this. The idea is that right now in New World, you have like one server, right? And the idea is you have multiple smaller servers, and then you have different instances of those smaller servers, and that's split up per region. So, like Monarchs Plus, for example, they're gonna have like 8 servers, quote unquote, like effectively on like Valhalla or whatever server that you're on, so that it can kind of help deal with an influx of new players. It can just allow more people to play in the same area. This will also help with drop rates a lot, because if you're on a different instance, you're going to have a different drop table. So, like, in general, it will be easier to farm resources in these areas where there are shards. And it will also just be, like, a generally improved experience. We're going to be able to get a higher server cap. The main downside is we're not going to have, like... It's going to be hard to do PvP in terms of wars, because there's going to be more people on per server eventually with this. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it's a net positive for now, but we'll kind of have to wait to see how it goes. Sharding is cool, just need to be careful to not lose immersion of open world. Sharding should be used sparingly. Yeah, it shouldn't be forced. It should be like a thing where it's like, if you reach a certain amount of players, like, move players to this shard or whatever. Silo. Nice. So that's one thing that's going on there. They're originally going to do this in Monarch's Bluffs and Windsward, which are 2 main spawning areas, right? So this is, again, alluding to the console release. We're going to have new players. Those new players will likely be all in Monarch's Bluffs and Windsward at the start. So the shard system needs to be proven to work there so that they can actually log into the game and they aren't faced with hour-long queues. AGS is basically just trying to improve that new player experience that we all had to face back in the day, and kind of is hoping that we are able to capture some of that console art audience. So you turn the shards on or off. Not directly. You can kind of group together in the same shard, or you can get on the same shard as someone else if you're in a group. If you're in a raid, this will also apply, I imagine. I don't know how this is going to work with influence races. I imagine that everything PvP was going to be in the same shard. I'm pretty sure they mentioned that at some point here, but I'm not 100% sure that's going to be the case in influence races, but I'm like 80% sure it's probably going to be the case. New player scopium? Yeah, I mean, we're at that point. We'll see. What if we don't know what's going to happen when the console stuff comes out, but we'll see. Solo players so this is just like how they're going to map people to shards. They're basically just going to try to put it with people that you know. Area chat's going to be limited to shard, which makes sense, but like your other chats will be limited to the world, so you're still going to be able to help other people in the world, or like still like see those different messages. Like if you're looking for a chest run, just to be able to see that, you don't really have to like think about that too much. And that's like the really big thing that's coming. There's the camps remain in the shards where they're placed, so you'd be in the same shard if you died. You won't spawn into a different shard. And there's some like other like smaller ramifications with that. That's like the general idea of like what shards are. They're a net positive unless they're implemented poorly. The only thing that can happen with shards that's like a little bit iffy is like, what if I go from Monarch's Bluffs to Everfall, right? I'm like entering into a different server, and that experience of moving between servers is something that's like kind of hard to get. Like, there's some games that have gotten to the point where you can launch an arrow from this server, it goes into the other server, and it's completely seamless, and we'll see if New World's going to be at that point or not. That's definitely going to be something that we can test. I imagine there's not going to be a ton of PvP on these edges, because most things are contained within each zone. Like, if there's an influence race, it's going to be within the zone. You're not going to go in between zones as much, but it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. So you, like, load into an empty Monarch's Bluffs? I'm very new to sharding. No. it'll be balanced. So it's like it's basically saying, what if we had our current server and then we just divided it into 10 smaller servers and we called each one of those pieces of a pie a shard? Like, that's like what they're effectively doing. And when they introduce this system, they're going to be able to increase the amount of players in that region and eventually maybe even the player cap to the server. So you can go from like 3,000 player servers to maybe like 5,000, 6,000. It just depends how many shards they introduce. Honestly, reading the shard thing, all I thought is they're gonna fuck this up bad. Yeah, probably, which is why they're introducing it in this current patch so that they could fuck it up for all the PC players, so the console players have a seamless experience because we know how QA works at AGS. To be honest, but like, it will, in theory, it should be better. Kind of have to wait and see though how they implement it. Do not have a lot of faith as a base standpoint, but I know they have been working on this stuff for a long time, so there's a chance it will be good. Anti-cheat's been upgraded. I don't think it's going to affect too much. We'll see how the botting system works out with this. There's kind of various bug fixes that are coming along here, so like, in general, the game is going to feel smoother. I feel like we shouldn't read through every single bug, but there's a decent amount of them. The weapon swapping stuff will be better. In theory, it's supposed to feel more like that combat from Season 4 that we loved. I don't think we're going to be there quite like right away, but I think we might be there by Season 6. But there are a decent amount of bugs that got fixed. I think we as a community reported like over 200. Most of those have been fixed, but they're just not on here, and I don't blame them because no one wants to read all this stuff because it's just so long. Usually, I think it'll be less than 24 hours after the patch and a new bow exploit will be found. Yeah, because they're fixing the Rain of Arrows. I mean, the thing is that Rain of Arrows thing is still going to exist. They're just adding more transition frames, so it's like harder to do it with Rain, if that makes sense. Let's start talking about weapons, I think. Void Gauntlet, they made it so that you could actually use the Void Blade attacks in water, and they fixed an issue where consecutive Void Gauntlet attacks would not turn the player in the proper direction if they're facing the wrong way. These are both minor. I don't think they'll have really an effect on the Void Gauntlet overall. Oh, don't forget the CC and block changes. Yeah, I guess that's probably worth talking about. They are nerfing CC, and they are nerfing blocking effectively with this change. They also have this backwards. Heavy should be plus 15%. It's just they did not check their work before they put this out, which is kind of what I expect, to be honest, at this point. Light was minus 15%. Now it's going to be minus 10%. So, like, overall, blocking got a little bit worse for heavy, got a little bit better for light. Be interesting to see if they continue to use that system where if you take multiple hits while you're blocking, you progressively like gain more stamina mitigation, and that's something that's really important to play around with as a tank, and it really improves your survivability a lot. They also updated shirking and power to be 7% per stack for 3 stacks from 4% and power for 4 stacks. So you have a higher cap. This will reduce the uptime a bit for shirking and power with the seconds that they provided in the past for the delta here, but overall will allow you to do more damage with less dodges, which I think is a net positive. The CC reduction buff for medium is very nice, makes 3 freedom viable. Yep. You're going to be able to drop a freedom in every single class if you're still freedom stacking. I know a lot of people aren't freedom stacking at this point, so it's like, I don't know how big of a deal it is, but at least it will feel nicer. So we already talked about Void Gauntlet life stuff. They're adjusting the UI to be in the center of the screen when casting a healing spell. So they're improving that a little bit. They fixed an issue that caused healing abilities to trigger their mana cost and cooldown despite the spell canceling due to the target moving out of range. So that's kind of a quality of life thing, going to improve the experience a little bit. Don't know if they're fixing some of the life staff bugs. I hope they are. There was like a bug where if you casted a single target while you were falling, it got canceled. Or like something along those lines, or if someone else was falling, like I forget the exact way that it was reproduced, but like there's some like smaller life stat bugs that probably should be fixing this patch, and I know a lot of healers like really don't like this patch for life stuff right now, so we'll see how those get addressed. Kind of gonna be trial by fire here. Hatchet got a really big buff. They are Basically, buffing Berserk to the point where it's not conditional off of having low HP, and instead it's just a damage increase to your crit damage. I think this basically makes Berserk mandatory. If you are hitting someone from behind with Hatchet, you will just delete them. Very, very good assassin class. Likely going to be at least meta in terms of like OPR, or like used in OPR, like maybe 3v3, open world, probably the PvP zone, assuming that is still coming. That is probably going to be used a lot there just because of its ability to assassinate players, and if you can get the jump on people, you could probably just delete them instantly with this kind of thing. This is like along the lines of like maybe like a 15 to 20% damage buff for reference. Like it's a really, really big deal. And you can just like face tank people and just hit them from the front. You don't necessarily just have to hit people from behind with the hatchet now because your crit chance is also getting increased. So that's fine, but BB doing damage isn't low. Yeah, I don't really know about that one. Hatchet, like right now, could basically one shot. You could hit for about 12k with just a feral rush. So like, it's in a very, very good spot, and it's gonna get even better. Gonna go so hard in PvE, dude. I didn't even think about that. Hatchet's gonna be really strong in PvE. Fire stuff. They fixed a bug between swapping between abilities, and they also buffed Flare. Flare wasn't really used because it's just a damage decrease, but like if you're lobbing it and you're hitting multiple people, then like you're getting value off of that. So I could see this getting used, but like I don't know. To me, it's like I think this is going the wrong direction. I think we talked about this in the past, but like Fire Staff is already like probably in the top 2 to 3 weapon conversation in the game. Like I think you could argue top weapon in the game, and them buffing it even more feels very backward and feels like they need to be nerfing Fire Staff, and I'm very confused why they're buffing it even more. But Flare is not used for what it's worth, so maybe this will help Flare get used a little bit more. Musket caught a lot of buffs. Most of these are utility, not damage, but there was no nerf to damage while buffing the utility, which effectively just allows the musket to do more. So they fixed a few bugs relating to getting shots off, and they just weren't working consistently. And then the main thing here is stopping power. Is pushback got increased by 2 meters. 2 meters will just allow you to like kind of keep distance a little bit more if you're hitting your shots and just force people back, allow you to get the reload off, and kind of help you just not get punished as much by melees when they get on top of you. Like musket right now is if you get a melee on top of you, you are running and you are probably dying. So this will help it a little bit. Fire stuff is balanced? Nah, it is not. What do you mean? Remove the headshot secondary cooldown for ultimate Deadeye, instead of granting a bonus if 2 or more targets are hit with a single attack. So this is like just really, really good for Clats. Update lethal combo ultimate to apply to all musket debuffs instead of only those to the trapper tree exclusively. So you have a little bit more access there to like basically just more utility from the musket tree. This won't directly be a DPS buff, but will indirectly be a DPS buff, and it'll be kind of interesting to see where musket ends up. I don't think it's a really popular class anymore, but for the people that are good with it, it is definitely oppressive, and I think will continue to be oppressive because of how good its slows are, just naturally. Ice Gauntlet, they fixed the double procking in Tomb, so that exploit slash bug is gone. That a lot of people were using, made IG basically mandatory for every class that was considering running an IG or not. What's up, Lagoon? Keep going infinite? Yeah. They fixed an issue that rendered characters unable to move while teleporting during an active Ice Gauntlet and Tomb ability state. I don't know if this completely fixes the issue where you can tomb and go through like a door in OPR. I think we need a little bit more clarification on that. That's something that we need to test. Yeah, there's a war tonight, Lagoon, but it's like very, very late, like in a few hours. There's like a New World League War 2 in like 2 hours, I think. Must It Bloom Gone is actually good. Yeah, that will help people a lot too. Like the removing the accuracy penalty. Like that thing was so annoying. So IG overall getting nerfed a bit. Bow, they added transition frames to Rain of Arrows. They're basically just trying to, and like these other abilities are trying to make it so that you can't just machine gun bow, which is good. I think it was pretty strong before. Well, it'll be interesting to see where bow ends up. I think people might still like use this if it's still a DPS increase, but it's going to be like less oppressive than it is right now. They nerfed random arrows a bit, and they nerfed a poison shot a bit. I don't think these really matter that significantly. Blunderbuss, they reduced the reload time, which doesn't really matter because usually with Blunderbuss, you shoot your 2 shots, you put it on your back, you use your offhand, you let it reload automatically, and then you shoot your shots again. And then before that increase of in reload time, so maybe you can main hand the BB a little bit more with this, you get a light attack damage penalty. So I think Crush, you worked out that this is like an 8% nerf, right? So BB is still looking for buffs. Continues to get nerfs. I think it's down about 25 to 30% damage in terms of burst compared to when it was actually used. So it's just not very healthy right now. Like, I'm very surprised they continue to nerf BB, and I think they're only nerfing BB because they don't know how to interpret data correctly, and they don't realize that BB is only being used for utility and not for damage anymore. BB is simple, revert all nerfs since the expansion. The bugs are fixed. Yep, I agree. But I clearly do not have influence on this decision because BB has not been buffed, even though we've been preaching about that for 4 to 6 months at this point. They reduced exhaust and net shots performance, which is probably good because that thing is like really, really oppressive and like really, really annoying. But there's some other reasons for that too, where stuff is not being reduced when it should be reduced because everything is reduced off of base duration, not off of max duration of CC effects. And if they were to implement that, then that would make CC a lot less oppressive, and I think it would be really healthy for the game overall, and I'm confused why they have not implemented that. Flail, they're buffing Leader of the Pack, which is like the aura of Empower, from 10% to 15% as a solo, and from 5% to 10% for your allies. Big support Flail buff. I wouldn't say this is like really a significant damage increase, but it will, enable allies more. I think this really pushes Flail to the point where it's 100% mandatory if it was not 100% mandatory before, and like you need to have this in a war in order to get good value, just because it's like a very significant amount of Empower for no cost, basically. Rapier, they're not gonna throw in the Deadly Flourish upgrade, which a lot of people are like, oh my god, this is like amazing. Like, Rapier's gonna be so good, and like all these different modes, and we're like, yeah, this is probably a little too strong, we're gonna not do that for now, which is whatever. Spear is gonna have a few nerfs here. Probably a good thing. This weapon has been pretty strong for a long period of time, needs some adjustments. So, the Cyclone Invigorating combo upgrade has a max target limit of 2, so this is going to limit the amount of stamina that you can generate from the Cyclone, basically. Evasive Maneuvers is only applying to the next dodge within 2 seconds, not to all dodges, so you can't just spam dodges anymore with Spear and generate infinite stamina. They're nerfing Perforate a bit, and then they are also nerfing the amount of stamina effectively you get from critting someone. It's no longer flat stam, instead of the stam regen increase, so that means you would have to hit someone, and then you would have to not dodge for a bit and generate that stam naturally. I think this will bring Spear in line with other weapons when we'll see a pretty steep drop-off, because stamina was like one of the main reasons why Spear is good. I don't think it's going to be like gone, though. I think we're just going to go from like, if there were 10 slotted before, there's probably going to be 6 slotted after, maybe 4. Like, we're going to lose around half the popularity, I imagine, because these are like relatively big crits or nerfs. I think that Javelin Spear still viable, just the other type of spear is a little bit crazy. So we'll see how that turns out. Healers cried so much, AGS had to take care of the pretty little healers. The spear CC is somewhat gone. Sword and Shield's interesting because I think this weapon's actually more broken than Spear right now and is used by more people than Spear, but didn't really catch too many nerfs. It actually caught some buffs. So Defender's Resolve is effectively getting buffed in the damage reduction category, but is getting nerfed in the heal amount category. I would consider this to be a net buff. but a lot of people would consider this to be a net nerf, and it would just depend where you're using it. Like if you're using this as a solo thing, just to be able to heal yourself up, it's not going to be as helpful. But if you're using this to like survive large amounts of damage, it will be even better because the cooldown is less, and you'll have more uptime on a cooldown because you activate that frame a little bit sooner, and you can use it more defensively rather than like having to use this ability, if that makes sense. Less than 200 con, it's a buff. 200 con, same. More than 200 con, a nerf. Okay, that's good to know from the base health. That's not factoring in health, though, in terms of on your armor or on the jewelry, though, I imagine, right? So it's probably a little bit lower than that. Defender's resolve at the animation is quick will be a must for disruptors. I don't think the animation will be quick, but the proccing it will be quick. I think this is borderline better than Shield Bash already, and will definitely be better after this. Just very, very good for living. Like, the effectiveness of this perk is about the equivalent of running, I don't even know, like 12 or 13 Enchanted Ward, and it applies to every ability in the game. Like, it's a very, very strong ability if you use it right. One of the strongest in the game if you know how to use it, but if you don't use it right, it can feel really, really weak. Warhammer, basically just making Mighty Gavel better. Probably still won't be used, but, you know, it's fun. Someone might figure out a way to make that useful at some point. Might just delete people. Artifacts, they buffed wing leather shoes to increase 10% their damage by 10% when haste is active. This is a 10% base damage increase, is honestly a pretty big deal. I could see this being used by a few different builds after this. Like any build that like wants to keep distance and has access to lots of haste, which basically is just bow. Like, this is a very, very viable option for you. And people that have access to, like, somewhat have access to haste, like, I think it's viable as well. I think this might be a pretty sleeper after the fact, because it's like it's almost non-conditional 10% haste. I don't think it will be, like, hard meta, but it's definitely going from, like, maybe a D to F tier artifact to, like, maybe a B tier. Like, it's much, much better. Musket gets haste every dodge, right? Yeah, I think that's bow. Maybe Musket gets it too. Is that empower or base damage? That should be base damage. Assuming, like, they usually, when they say damage, it means base damage. This plus the new shocking empower? Yeah. The haste on dodge stacks as well on Musket? Okay. So both of them have it, so Musket and bow have the option. Bow's awful now because you only get the haste with full stamina. So Musket will be a little bit better with this. And then Musket will be able to keep their distance, and then it'll be able to, like, knock people back a little bit more. So this seems, like, pretty strong for Musket, to be honest. Mag Gauntlets getting a bit of a buff. I don't think this will change anything, because Void Gauntlet isn't built to do damage right now, and I don't think it'll be built to do damage afterward, and I don't think there's another class that would ever consider using this artifact, because crits don't have enough utility for people. But it's cool that they're buffing it. They fixed the Phoenix, so this will work now. So this way, like, the Phoenix, for people that don't know, it got removed for a few reasons. The main idea with this is with the Phoenix, you're able to become literally invincible. This reset every instance, but you were able to become invincible in any PvP mode, in any PvE mode, an open world, so you can get outside of the map. And that, for obvious reasons, broke things, so they had to disable Phoenix and are adding it back in. Consumes, they're fixing an issue preventing consumes from canceling basic melee attacks in startup. This is nice quality of life. And then using a consume item can now cancel a block action. This is... I don't really know how to interpret this in terms of if this will be a quality of life or not, but there was a thing at one point where you could consume while blocking and it would have no animation. It's kind of hard to read into this without just playing around with it, to be honest. Fixed an issue where player could slide while using honing stones or coding while also using a flow and shield. Okay, that's a very specific thing. Game modes, they fixed an issue that could allow enemies to fire projectiles through the outpost rush fort gates. This is kind of sad because this is going to enable repairing more, which it still feels kind of strong, to be honest. They decreased the siege ammo kit costs, I guess. It's nice-ish. And they fixed but like siege ammo just doesn't do damage, so like it doesn't really matter. They fixed some Winter Forge stuff. Uh, I don't think anything here else is super significant. This is like going to be a very nice patch, mostly for the balance changes. I don't think the bug fixing will be good. I would argue this patch will probably be more impactful than the Season 6 patch for people that like actively play the game right now, in terms of like quality of life from what I think is coming for Season 6, but we'll kind of have to wait and see it with time. And it should be interesting. No Greatsword patch notes. I mean, yeah, honestly, I think they would have nerfed Greatsword. They're thinking about nerfing the Artifact Greatsword because it's so popular. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. Not all the bugs from the list on here. Hopefully they really fix them. Yeah. They had plenty of time to fix them, so I really hope they do.